Hello, my name is Melise and I'm an NLP coach, I'm a therapist, I'm a counselor, I'm a life coach, I'm all these things for work. I'm also someone who's just really curious, and I have been since I was a little girl. I'm most interested in how I open my heart and how I learn to move back to a more natural way, which is heart-based. It was very scary starting this channel and being really vulnerable about some things. I remember the first video I put up, I was so scared that night when I went to sleep. I was so anxious about people judging me, reaffirming some of my earliest wounding, which is that I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. And maybe you relate to that too. I will continue to make these videos as long as I feel that it's helpful. So today I want to talk about this imbalance I've had in my life between the masculine and the feminine side of things. I have grown up wanting to be in control because any other option just felt really, really uncomfortable. If you look at the pattern of my life, it was slowly developing and collecting coping mechanisms that made me feel that I was in control. One of the worst ones was my eating disorder, bulimia, that I had for 20 years. Ironically, it became something that controlled me, which is often the case with a lot of addiction. I'm grateful that I'm courageous in some aspects to be able to say, hey, show me my blind spots and show me my fears. I want to see them. I had to first see there was a problem. I had to then admit, just like the 12-step model, that there were things I could change and there are things that I had to accept. And I was able to finally find my way outside of my eating disorder. And similarly, I found my way outside of drinking and drug taking and codependent relationships and a whole myriad of addictions that I was using to treat my extreme degree of needing to be in control, because that's exhausting. It takes an enormous amount of energy redirected at thinking that you're in control. And this, of course, means a lot of control over relationships in your life, because really, if we're honest, it's the relationships that feel the scariest, and they're the most confronting, and they're the ones that really mirror what is within us that needs to be healed. And so I would try and control my relationships with others. I first want to just look at the qualities of masculine, which was really what I became very imbalanced in. And that is a lot of producing, achieving, controlling, creating results. And it's very based in the external world. Yes, it's also about giving, which is a beautiful aspect of the masculine. And there's toxic qualities of the masculine, and then there's divine qualities or healthy qualities of the masculine. And I'm probably more focused on this toxic part of what I became in trying to control my world. What I really was lacking through all this time was these feminine qualities that had a lot to do with receiving. I just had such a problem with stepping aside of myself, getting out of my own way, and being vulnerable enough to, one, admit I needed help, two, to collaborate in any way, and three, to receive help. I would control my entire world through focusing on what I was eating, focusing on my weight, focusing on exercise, focusing on constant work. I was so overworking myself all the time. I didn't rest. I exhausted myself. And you know, there's a law of rhythm. It's one of the Hermetic principles. I would encourage you to learn the Hermetic principles. There's 7 main ones, but this one perfectly encapsulates what happened in my life. Law of rhythm says that everything flows out and in. Everything has its tide. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything, and the measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. And so this is precisely what happened in my life. All through my teens and my 20s and my 30s, my life was in a complete swing to the side of masculine and control, of course, everything compensates. So my life was one of extremes. This was a huge realization for me. This realization didn't come until my 40s. I'm 44, nearly 45 now. But looking back, I see this complete imbalance in my life. And how that looked was I would get really drunk, I would get out of control, and I would totally let myself go completely out of control now. So I was that very irresponsible drunk. And I lost many relationships, ironically, because of this behavior, because of these extremes in my life. And I've seen this in the lives of countless clients that come to me for addiction too. There is always an equal and opposite reaction in their lives. They will be trying to compensate for that extreme control they have in their life. This is what happens when we're not in balance. Any balance is important. And today I'm focusing on the masculine and the feminine, but any imbalance will create an extreme opposite reaction in your life. My story of being out of control, my bulimia, my drinking, the drug taking, the relationships that I had allowed me, it didn't feel good at the time, but it allowed me to hit a rock bottom where I had to look around and be real with myself for a moment and go, oh my God, I'm in pain. And I don't have any real relationships that I can trust. I don't know how to fix this. I have no idea what to do. I just know that I'm wreaking destruction wherever I go. It wasn't until I realized that life was a mirror, that the relationships in my life were a direct reflection of the relationship I had with myself, which was pretty crap. I had a really bad relationship with myself. It was kind of non-existent. There was certainly no intimacy. I didn't listen to my feelings. I stayed busy and distracted, so I didn't have to. They were way too painful for me to go there. And, bulimia is kind of a form of swallowing your fears with food. It was just constant repression of feelings. And we know what happens when we don't stay regular with our emotions, express them regularly. We get constipated, metaphorically. Life is a mirror. It will reflect this internal constipation, this lack of flow in your life, and you'll have all sorts of circumstances and situations that are uncomfortable and chaotic and painful. I had to learn the art of contemplation. You may have heard of this. And this is a key tool that I impart with my clients. It's very necessary if you want to move out of a life of addiction and control or being overly imbalanced in the masculine energies. Contemplation helps you to gradually surrender and let go of this control and become more patient with yourself as you grow this relationship with yourself, as you slow down enough and create enough space to actually listen to yourself and your feelings and your real needs and your fears, which is the big one. We have to be able to feel to heal. My rock bottom really was a deep exhaustion in life. And I just ran out of energy. As I said earlier, it takes an enormous amount of energy to stay in control. The other aspect that really helped me illuminate this pattern in my life was something called the gene keys, which you can research on your own if you're interested. The gene keys was a beautiful tool or system to help me understand the art of contemplation and also some of my own patterns in my life. And so if you're interested in that, you can certainly Google the gene keys or Richard Rudd. This has all helped me gain a wonderful perspective. And one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is to start to take the journey of self-awareness. I mean, you can't really have long-term sustainable inner change if you're not self-aware, if you only look outside of yourself instead of realize that you are part of your perspective. In fact, you create your perspective through your own filters of perception. Realizing that life is a mirror, you start to realize that, well, you're the only one who can save you. We have to move out of any kind of victim consciousness if we want to create change in our life. And so we have to take full responsibility. I realized that I had this imbalance of masculine and I needed to bring in a balance of feminine energies. And so what are we talking about, feminine energies? Well, the biggest one is receiving, being able to receive from others, and compassion. And that means opening the heart. That means giving to others from a place of love rather than seeking results. That means caring and nurturing oneself. And that means going within. You know, if you think about the yin and the yang sign, the yin sign, the feminine aspect is dark, it's black with a little round white aspect in it. And that black part of that yin is, I like to think of it as the womb. It's dark. It's somewhere where you cocoon in, you rest within. And it's a place of re-energizing. You know, the yang side is the white side with a little round dot of black, which is the yin. So it's mostly about going outside of ourselves and being energetic and creative and producing and achieving. But we need both aspects of that yin and yang to be balanced. This applies on a micro and a macro level in our lives. There is another principle in the Hermetic principles called the law of correspondence, as within, so without, as above, so below. What is going on inside of ourselves is reflected in our outside world and vice versa. And so if you look at your relationships, you can also see that imbalance of masculine and feminine. And I saw that in most of my past relationships. I was always attracted to a male who would allow me to dominate and control in some aspect or another in the relationship. I've realized in my marriage to a wonderful man that I finally have the opportunity to nurture my feminine side, because he gives me that container, if you like, that safe space to fully be myself and receive. And he has been the biggest giver that I've ever experienced in romantic relationships in my life. He has shown me what giving really looks like through giving to me. He's given me time, space, resources. He's given me love, using my love language, which is words of affirmation. And he has given me a space to practice receiving. Now, at first, it wasn't comfortable for me. In fact, all I wanted to do was divert any kind of gift that I received from him. At first, it was very alien for me to receive. In fact, I resisted for the first few years of my marriage, receiving. I had such trouble with it. I was so uncomfortable about receiving that I would not receive the time that I was given. See, that was one of the biggest things I was given, and what a gift it is, time. My husband has given me space from working to create my business. I felt so guilty at first. I was racked with guilt every day that I didn't have to go to a 9-to-5 job anymore. I really had to work hard through that guilt to see what was going on. And one of the biggest things that was going on was that I had this programming from childhood that said that I had to work hard. I had to do, produce, and achieve in order to receive love or worthiness. And I perceived my working hard as what I was giving in exchange for love. And that is simply not healthy. That is a relentless cycle of suffering. And I hope that if this is something that sounds familiar to you, that you can recognize this cycle and see this pattern in your own life. We don't have to earn worthiness or love. And if this is something you're also kind of diverting into this idea that you have to work hard in when you don't have to, when there's an opportunity to rest more, to relax more, to go within, to receive, then just know that it's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to let go and actually receive that gift of time to rest. In fact, it's only when we truly rest and we step out of time, you know, the past and the future, that relentless kind of anxiety, depression cycle, that we are able to be still enough to receive our own guidance, our heart's guidance, our internal guidance system, insights, intelligence and wisdom to move forward in the right direction that's aligned for us. This was very apparent in my friendships. I would be attracted to strong females who also like to control, because often like attracts like, and it's familiar and it's something we've grown up with, and possibly one of our parents was a controller, and that's often where we get the pattern. I would often find myself in these relationships with these women stepping down into a subservient position, like I used to often in this cycle of codependency and narcissism control, codependency, narcissism control. And I would find that when these strong women would step up and be the controller, I would suddenly feel that I was getting exhausted and drained from their controlling, which is pretty ironic, isn't it? And it wasn't until recently that I saw that I was very attracted to certain women because there was a part of me that I lost that I could see in them. And I lost that part of me because of this overbalance of masculine. And that was the part of just being sensual and nurturing, the feminine part. I had real trouble with that aspect of me. And so I would be attracted to women in my relationships who had this beautiful sensuality, but were still generally controlling or overbearing in some way. These relationships were the hardest because it was like this love-hate kind of relationship. I found it hard to let go of being with someone who had this part that I really craved to be, that I'd lost. And yet often I wouldn't be treated the best. Now I see that these were the relationships that were teaching me the most, but these were often the ones I ran from. I'm not proud of having the relationship patterns that I did. I was in a constant roller coaster, and these patterns of rejection started very young. When I was a little girl, I thought I was very ugly, and I remember the first friend that rejected me after we were really good friends for a long time. I thought, well, it has to be because I'm ugly. I made this conclusion that I had to be pretty to be accepted. I didn't know how to be pretty, so I felt very lost, confused when I was a little kid. And as you can imagine and maybe see the pattern, I moved into extreme dieting and losing weight when I was 11. And then 18, I started purging. So I finally felt that I could gain that control back, the control to be pretty. I didn't have it when I was a kid. I thought, well, I can't change how I look. But then I realized there were things I could do to manipulate my appearance, such as losing weight, that I could control. And that's often how an eating disorder starts for girls and boys. So control is a very deep-seated pattern for many of us. If this is something that you recognize in your life, I couldn't have done without seeing a therapist. But really what we want to do is we want someone to help us to step through our blind spots and shadows that are running our programming, running our thinking, and change those. And we can. That's what I do. I help people to reprogram some of those earlier childhood belief systems and change one's perception and change one's world. These friendships and these relationships I noticed in my life were a repeated pattern. And any pattern that you begin to notice, and I highly recommend journaling to find these patterns, will be a mirror of something that you need to change within. Now, these lessons that I've learned to bring balance back in and to bring in this feminine energy, so that I am not always thinking that I have to be in control, so that I'm not always doing, producing and achieving, so that I can rest, cocoon when I need to, go within, pause, contemplate. These lessons I learned have helped me see every day I have to be open to receiving and being okay with that. Acknowledging the part of me that knows that it is okay and it is very healthy to receive. And you know the golden rule, we want to treat others the way we would want to be treated. So this doesn't mean that I only receive. It means having a compassionate, caring heart. It's giving from your heart to others without doing it for productivity or results. Nothing to do with that. That's control. Compassion for others just because. You'll find that this starts to bring in a natural balance in your life. There is a reason for creating a balance of the masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang. And that is clearly seen when we look at the natural cycles of life. If you'll see that there is always a time for productivity and achievement, and there's always a time for rest, time to regenerate, re-energize, to go within. We wouldn't have a healthy life if we didn't recognize we are part of nature. And you'll get better at following your cycles when you start to attune to your inner guidance system or your heart. So that brings me right back to feeling your feelings. Our heart's language is feeling. Reactivating what you might have shut down as a child, which is feeling, and allowing yourself to feel the enormous amount of repressed energy stuck in your body, maybe for the first time, and finish those feelings and release those feelings in a healthy way, in a conscious way. And if you need help with that, reach out to someone who does that kind of work, shadow work. Recognizing there's times for heightened creativity and productivity, and there's times for rest and cocooning. And there's going to be mini cycles in every day as well. It's not just every week, month, year. Every day there's going to be times for rest, time to pause, time to reflect, time to breathe, and then time to get back to it and work and produce and achieve. This is where surrender comes into play. You have to be able to let go. A pause and a breath several times a day, making it important. It's not a luxury. It's like exercise. I learned years ago that I have to incorporate exercise in my week for my own mental and physical health. But I have to also incorporate pauses in my day for my own mental and emotional health. This is becoming present, clearly. This is moving out of the future. If we become present, we can finally access our internal guidance system, our heart, where we receive our wisdom, our insights, our inspiration. We want to be able to create the pause because it helps us check in with ourselves. Once I started to bring in these beautiful rebalancing tools and techniques, I started to see that I wasn't exhausted the same way anymore. I used to burn out and have meltdowns, but that doesn't happen when I'm learning to pause. I create this steadiness in my life and an emotional regulation. If you're someone who flies around in their emotions like a roller coaster, you can be sure that you're not pausing enough. You're not breathing enough. You're not becoming present. Allow yourself to have these cycles of flow and rest, chaos and order, yin and yang. So the results of balancing, the exhaustion dies, you're going to have your internal guidance system come online. There's going to be less messy mistakes in your life or backtracking to fix things, much more feeling of connection with others in your life because you're able to give and receive. So you won't have that yearning or void or lack within that you need to reach out and connect with others that something's missing. Steps to begin for you to begin to balance this masculine and feminine energy or over control in your life. And pause, breathe, check in with yourself. And I would encourage you to do that 3 times a day, maybe when you first awaken, perhaps just before you eat lunch, and just before you go to sleep. And there's many other opportunities to add these pauses in. You can do it at red lights, whenever you see a certain time on the clock, or whenever you see a bird. Like any new habit, it's going to be uncomfortable for the first few weeks because you're rewiring your brain. It's not unconscious yet. So it's going to be something you have to be more hypervigilant with. Surrender your worries. Don't worry about things. And trying to think your way out of everything is control. It's not going to work. Our mind is a closed circuit system. 95% of our thoughts are the same thoughts from the day before. Allow yourself to drop out of thinking by pausing, by becoming aware of your breath, so that you can tap into your heart and receive true insight and inspiration. All right, I hope this has been helpful. Have a beautiful day. See ya.